Audiobook Academy Biography presents Nancy Reagan. As the First Lady of the United States during President Ronald Reagan's administration, Nancy Reagan was also the driving force behind the Just Say No drug prevention program. She was a former Hollywood actress. Nancy Reagan was the First Lady of the United States from 1981 to 1989. She was married to Ronald Reagan, who was president at the time. She worked as an actress in Hollywood during the 1940s and 1950s before marrying Reagan, who was already an actor at the time. She served as First Lady of California before transferring to the White House as a key advisor to her husband. The Just Say No drug awareness campaign was her main focus. After her husband was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, she became an outspoken campaigner for finding a solution for the condition. Early years. There was nothing in Nancy's early life that predicted how she would turn out. The only child of businessman Kenneth Robbins and actress Edith Luckett Robbins, and Frances Robbins was born on July 6, 1921, in New York City. The nickname Nancy was bestowed upon Nan at an early age. Edith Galbraith sent Nancy to live with her aunt and uncle, Virginia and C. Audley Galbraith, in Bethesda, Maryland, after her father left the marriage during Nancy's infancy. Nancy went to Sidwell Friends School for a while she lived in that area. When Edith was in New York for long theater performances, she and her aunt would travel to see her mother. Loyal Davis, a well-known Chicago neurosurgeon, married Edith in 1929. Loyal adopted Nancy in 1931 and gave her the last name Davis after she moved in with her mother. Girls' Latin school was her first exposure to riches and status in her new neighborhood. She went on to major in acting at Smith College, where she graduated with a BA in 1943. Career as an actor. Nancy's first job out of college was as a sales associate at Marshall Field's in Chicago, and her second job was as a nurse's aide. She began her acting career with the support of a few of her mother's acquaintances. Her first acting performance was in a touring company production of Ramshackle Inn, where she played a non-speaking character. It was in New York City that the play eventually made it to Broadway, where Nancy was cast in a supporting part opposite Yul Brynner and Mary Martin in the 1946 production of Lute Song. MGM Studios signed Nancy Davis to a 7-year deal in 1949 when she flew to Hollywood. Success, on the other hand, didn't arrive right away. MGM had a hard time getting her a role in the movies they were developing. As a child, she was projected as a dependable housewife or a steadfast woman. The Doctor and the Girl, starring Glenn Ford, and East Side, West Side, starring Barbara Stanwyck, were her first two films. Night into Morning, which starred Ray Milland and Catherine Mead, was always her favorite film part, she claimed. Relationship with Ronald Reagan. The demand for parts had dwindled by 1949. To her surprise, she found out that her name had been added to a list of people who were suspected of being communist sympathizers by the film business. Neither Nancy nor any of her friends belonged to any communist organizations. One of two people listed with the same name was a different actress. Nancy first reached out to Screen Actors Guild, SAG, President Ronald Feldman in November 1949 in an attempt to get some aid from the SAG Executive Committee. It wasn't long until the two of them decided to get together, even though they had previously dated other individuals. In the wake of his difficult divorce from actress Jane Wyman the year before, Reagan was wary of getting married again. Reagan waited 3 years before proposing to Nancy, and she accepted. The wedding took place on March 4, 1952. Nancy settled into her new role as a stay-at-home mom and wife quite quickly, though she did continue to perform on occasion. Patricia Ann was born to the couple on October 21, 1952. After being married, Nancy still managed to finish 3 films, one of which was the World War II drama Hellcats of the Navy, in which her husband starred. Following guest appearances on a number of television shows until the early 1960s, Nancy retired from acting to focus on raising her family. Now, 4 Reagan children had been born. Ronald P. Reagan, born in 1958, and his children Maureen and Michael, both from his marriage to Nancy Wyman, complete the Reagan family. Nancy Reagan became the First Lady of California in 1967, following her husband's election to the state's governorship. For dubbing the governor's residence a fire trap and transferring her family to an affluent Sacramento neighborhood, she was swiftly condemned. In the face of criticism from the media and her husband's political adversaries, she stood by the decision, citing her family's safety as the reason. As she became involved with the foster grandparents program, her reputation grew. It wasn't until later that the Los Angeles Times proclaimed her the model First Lady. In 1976, Ronald Reagan, fresh off 2 terms as governor, began his run for the presidency of the United States. She had reservations about taking on the position of candidate's wife at first, but she eventually agreed to participate and became an important advisor to her husband by meeting with elderly residents, hosting luncheons, and giving speeches at these events. Reagan lost the Republican nomination to Gerald Ford in 1976, but he fought back and won the election the following year. Lady of the U.S. As she proclaimed that the White House was in need of a facelift in 1981, the snobbery that had hounded Nancy Reagan in California was carried over with her to the White House. She was subjected to a barrage of bad news after being slammed for frivolous spending on her new house amid a recession. Though private monies were obtained to refurbish the White House and much of her official attire was donated, she was accused of living luxuriously and not caring about Americans who were suffering. Nancy's public image was transformed in 1982 when she became an advocate for drug usage prevention and education. Nancy visited preventative and rehabilitation programs all around the country and in several international countries during her travels. She hosted a White House seminar on drug misuse among children and adolescents in 1985. Though her Just Say No campaign was condemned as simplistic, her efforts culminated in legislation, the National Crusade for a Drug-Free America Act, signed into law by President Reagan in October 1986. Continuing her efforts, Nancy addressed the United Nations General Assembly in 1988, testifying in support of tightening international drug interdiction and trafficking legislation. While all of this was going on, in October 1987, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and underwent a mastectomy. Perhaps Nancy Reagan's most essential function as First Lady was as the president's personal protector. This partly evolved out of the March 30, 1981 assassination attempt on his life. Thereafter, Nancy made it her concern to know all parts of his itinerary, even enlisting the advice of an astrologer before his schedule was completed. This produced friction between the First Lady and White House Chief of Staff Donald Reagan. When the Iran-Contra scandal was made public, Reagan was forced to resign as a result of their falling out. Later in life, Nancy Reagan founded the Nancy Reagan Foundation to help after-school drug prevention initiatives after her husband and her family departed the White House. Ronald Reagan and his wife, Nancy, moved to Bel Air, Los Angeles, where they lived and worked at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. Presidents and First Ladies from across the political spectrum showed up for a dedication ceremony in November 1991. In 1994, the pair donated to the Ronald and Nancy Reagan Research Institute in Chicago, Illinois, after Ronald Reagan was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and the couple pledged their support. Nancy spent the following 10 years focusing on her husband's care and only made a few appearances in and around Los Angeles. Nancy Reagan became an ardent opponent of President George W. Bush's stem cell research policies after her husband's death in 2004. Aside from receiving numerous accolades for her work on behalf of her husband's legacy, she also received an honorary degree from Eureka College, where Ronald Reagan attended college. President Obama signed the Ronald Reagan Centennial Commission Act while she was still there in 2009. When Nancy Reagan was alive, she wrote 3 memoirs: My Turn, The Memoirs of Nancy Reagan, 1989, I Love You Ronnie, Ronald and Nancy Reagan's Letters, 2000, and Entertaining at the White House, 2001. 2007. Funerals and the End of Life. On March 6, 2016, Nancy Reagan succumbed to congestive heart failure at the age of 94. She and her husband were buried together in the Reagan Presidential Library. Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Rosalind Carter were among the many friends, family members, and celebrities that attended her funeral. George W. Bush and Laura Bush, his wife and former First Lady, were also in attendance. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.